going. So the next crop that's going to be in version 2.5 of Uncharted Valley is going to be peanuts. So I want to show you a little bit. This video is going to be all about testing the peanuts and making sure they look good as far as the crops themselves in game. So I've gone ahead and added this to the map. So what I've done here was in the fill planes I have the peanut diffuse file. So that would be that. That's the what they're actually going to look like when they're in the trailer and on the ground. So then what I did was to add them to the map, I made this folder here, and these are all the different, these are from Shy Wizard, who did them for Dave back in FS22. So I just kind of, turned them over to that. So if you take a look, what I did for that was, this is the updated Peanut XML. This is where I made some changes for this year. So what I ended up doing for this year was I ended up doing it, setting it up like a swath. So I'm having a windrow go down of peanut cut, and then what I did was I looked at the harvest per square meters. I looked back in 22, it was set at 5.78, huge. It was dropping so many peanuts on the ground. So I kind of did a little bit of research and looked at it. Basically found that the yield was between green beans and peas. So I actually put the yield for that like about halfway in there. So that way there it will be about that yield for those. And then the other thing that I did was I made the sugar beet. I used the template for the sugar beet one because it seemed like it was the same. Again, remember, if you're copying and pasting these from FS22, you need to go down here and you need to change some of these attributes, like allows weeding or growing, weeding, hoeing, etc. You need to make sure that those are, a lot of these attributes are in here, because if they're not, it won't grow. Like for instance, if the is growing isn't on every line, this will not grow. So you need to really make sure that that stuff is in there. Really, again, look at the templates for that. I cut off the homs, however you say it. I cut those off. I decided to get rid of that. I made it so that, again, this is more of a swathing crop, so you can take a look. Basically made the same as sugar beet, so we can plant it. You'll be able to plant it in early and mid spring, and then be able to harvest later on, early autumn, mid autumn. So let's take a look in. Let's take a look one more thing here before we go in game. I wanted to show you the density map heights here. So again, what I did for that was, because I'm using a swath for this, I made peanut cut, and what I did for this as well is I put the fill to ground scale at 8.0, meaning that it's going to show up a lot more on the ground than they actually will because if it was 1.0, there wouldn't be a ton of peanuts on the ground. I wanted to make it look like it was like literally filling the whole ground with stuff. So that's why I made the scale at 8.0, and then the rate, and that all it is the scale, because then when those get picked up, it'll be the normal amount of peanuts. So that's what those look like there. And I think the other stuff that I had to do for putting that in, I put in the effects, I did end up using the belt effect and using peanuts on the belts. That's how I got the belts to work there. And then I ended up doing, needed the peanut, green, big, and harvest ready for the different effects as well for that. So the other thing I wanted to show you was, and I added it to the train, and I added it to the different sell points. I also put it in the ethanol sell point on Uncharted Valley, because I did see that peanut shells are used there. And then I also put it, like I said, I have it here where it says peanut cut to peanut with the pickup header green. So we're not going to really be using, we're going to have special equipment for that. We're not going to be using the Macton stuff, but that's going to come in a later video. So that is it for that. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look in game and show you guys what this looks like and make sure that this is going to grow. Alright, so let's take a look in the menu, and we'll see that peanuts is down here. It's added, so it's like grayish color, so that's down here. And we're going to notice into the sell point menu, if we go down here for the crops and look at peanuts, you can see that it's in both sell points, the Galt sell point and the Suncor sell point right there. So those are there, so that is good, and there are no errors or anything for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to plant this. So I got to turn off, let me do a couple things first here. I'm going to give myself a bunch of money. Let's see, because we always need that. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead And what was the other thing I was going to do? Oh, turn off. I have to turn off seasonal growth, so that way. And actually, let's just make sure. Let's look at the menu here. It should be because it's copied and pasted, but from sugar beet, so it should be. Yep, we got March and April, makes sense, and then October, harvestable in October, November. There's a lot of stages for this to grow through, by the way, too. So we're gonna be. It's gonna take a while for it to grow. Turn seasonal growth off, and then I'm gonna go ahead and let's just hit save on that. All right, and then let's grab the planter and start planting this stuff. Let's just make sure that. So this is tied to the. This is going to be tied to the. This is going to be tied to the planter, so that you could plant it with any of the planters that have the fruit type category of planter. For mine that I use in my game, I had to go and manually add it in here only because I cheat a little bit and have potatoes as in this planter, even though I'm not supposed to in sugar cane. So I purposely added it, but it is in the planter category, so it'll be on any planter that you use. So let's grab this one, and then I'm going to go ahead and plant this field here. So there's peanuts right there. And even though it says peanuts on this thing, the name of the fruit itself is actually peanut. So just FYI on that one, I made the L10N or the description say peanuts, and then because I was kind of looking at the other crops, and some of them did that. I'll show you that in a minute here, but let's try to get this out so that way we can plant this here. I'm just gonna plant over this field here. So this should be unfolding here. This planter is the JHHG one, which is really cool. I think he did a great job on this. Automatic on that. Let's generate that course. Okay. And here we go. And there we go, just getting that into the ground. And like I said, I noticed that if you look in the menu here for these, like parsnips and olives, they have soybeans. They have the S on the end of them. So that's why I did the same thing for peanuts. I put the S on the end because, again, it kind of makes sense instead of just saying, that just the singular version of it. So anyway, that is planting there. And while that is planting, I want to let's just make sure. So let's look at the back of this and just make sure that yes, it says peanuts and it says growing. That's very important because if something happened with the XML when we were doing this, the growth type, it would not say or growth. It wouldn't say growing. It would just be blank. So I'm glad that it says that, and that way it actually is growing. And again, that would be one of those things like if you didn't put is growing equals true on the XML lines, that might mess it up. I had a point when I was doing the Halms and I didn't have the harvest ready stated harvest ready. That would be another place where it would mess up. So again, if it says it's growing, that's a good thing. And on the map, having the green color, that's also a good thing because you know that it's actually growing there. So I'm going to go ahead and let this guy plant. I'm going to go ahead and let this guy plant out the rest of this field, and then I'm going to come back after it is done. Alright, so we got this field planted, and let's just make sure. So we got growing here, and let's just take a look at the mini map and just make sure. So we're on this field right here. Just make sure that it's all peanuts. So yep, we can see that disappearing, and then we'll just make sure growth is green. Good. So we're going to go ahead, and I think I have seasonal growth. Let's just make sure. I know I turned it off before. Yep, it's off. All right, so we're going to go ahead and fast forward the night. That's why I planted it in here with this house right here. So that way we can kind of see. I want to take a look at what each stage looks like. So that's what kind of the point of this is. So we're going to go ahead and fast forward this. And that way we can kind of see what each stage looks like and then go from there and fast forward just to make sure that it's going to grow. There are a lot of, like I said, there are a lot of stages for this. There's a few small stages, there's a few green ones. Yeah, so here's your first stage right here. And when I first did these, they weren't really in rows too much. It was like kind of like almost just like a giant, they almost looked like a giant, just wall of like these peanuts here, but I resized them so they kind of look more like they're in rows. I don't want to do. There's a lot of maps now, or people in Discord and whatnot that are starting to come out with the row crop ready maps and row crop ready crops. I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to do that yet because some of those are going to require like special planters to do. So I don't really want to do that and make it row crop ready because what they do for that is they do it like that is in real life. They make each planter like section that plants the corn or plants whatever the thing is in make it like its own work area so there actually is space in between. So like I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that yet or at all actually. So let's just take a look. I want to make sure this stuff is growing. Most of them I think we'll see something here. Again, some of these might be very similar in height. Kind of looks like it's past in one of these middle stages here. Let's take a look at the next one. Alright, let's look at this. Yeah, they seem like they're kind of growing instantly. This looks pretty good. Still can see like they look like they're in rows. That's the whole point of it. Because they do grow in rows, so that makes sense there. Go to the next one. Let's take a look and see what this looks like. Yep, getting darker. Keep going. Yep, darker. And I think so. These are my rice fields right over here. I think this is what happens when you don't flood the fields. I think they start, harvesting or withering. So I think you need to make sure you definitely flood them because that's quite a bit of crop loss there on those fields. Definitely make sure you flood those. Keep up with the flooding of those. All right, let's take a look. Getting closer. Stages all look good so far. And let's see this one. Yep, definitely bigger. Still, you can still see the rows here, which is pretty cool. Definitely darker. And maybe 1 or 2 more months, and that should be ready. Alright, so this one, let's take a look. Still growing. We're at the dark one. Okay, so next month we should be ready to harvest. And we'll just make sure that we indeed are. So one more time. And we should be good. Alright, and then we are ready to harvest. So there's your ready to harvest date, what it looks like. And just make sure, yep, that is ready to harvest. Perfect. Okay, so the next, I think what I'm going to do for the next video, so the next video in this little mini peanut series is probably going to be the release of the map. So you'll be able to plant the peanuts in version 2.5, you'll be able to plant the peanuts, and then In the video after that, I'll go over how you're gonna go about harvesting those with the special peanut equipment. So I think for this one, I think that's going to do it. So this is testing peanuts. So we tested all the growth stages and everything seems to work. I went over again how to put, how I put them in. And yeah, so the next, like I said, we'll see you back here for the next one. Thank you for watching.